Welcome to EternalJourney, the podcast.
Greetings to all my knights and padawans out there. You are listening to EternalJourney, the podcast that talks about all things eternal with a focus on limited play. I'm your host, Jedi, and this is episode 81, where we're going to be prepping you for the draft championship this weekend with our 50 pro tips in 50 seconds. Just kidding. We're not pros. And it's not 50
it's 50
seconds.
Minutes too.
Yeah, I was going to get... That was... Could I finish my joke, bro? It was like the whole title was wrong. All right. Well, yeah, it's 50 tips, draft tips in 50 minutes. Thanks, John.
There you go. No problem.
Oh, speaking of John, that's right. My good friend, or my all right friend now, apparently. John is on the line. What's up, buddy?
Hey. Also, Alex. Alex is here. I introed Sneak Attack.
What is up, my eternal friends and players?
Hello.
Oh, man, that would have been a great segue if Sonny was back on the show. But great job, Alex. Good to see you, buddy. All right, well, you can catch all three of us live at twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday doing the draft thing. Come hang out, check us out, watch John call out every one of my Puntawans, and then Alex tell me what the correct play is. And if you can't catch us live, check us out offline at youtube.com/EternalJourney yet again, where you can also catch the video version of this podcast. Time for shout outs. Man, you guys have been absolutely murdering it with those hype trains this last couple of weeks. It's actually, I feel like it's even more my community than usual because the hype trains come at the worst and most awkward possible moments. They either come in a super intense, I have to pay attention to every play game, or it's a mega long drug out brawl, or I'm just sitting there trying to work out technical issues, and then you guys throw hype train my way. You guys are absolutely insane. I want to give some shout outs to Chastity Weaver donating so many biddies, Extinction doing the bits and the gift sub hype, Titus and Blossom came in with some biddies, MLNTN came down with the 9-month, earning them the rank of Jedi Knight and getting their Yoda badge. Better Up coming with some more gift subs, Fast Cookie with the bits, Meadow B, fellow streamer, up and coming streamer, coming with the 3-month resub, Mercurial Blue gifting out more subs than I know what to do with. I'm pretty sure he's gifted out more subs than my channel has people in it, chat viewers, I guess. And then finally, the Demko coming in with the primetime sub, gift subs, and some biddies. Man, you guys are absolutely amazing, going insane on Twitch. Thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate it. It's hilarious moments, definitely highlights of the stream every week. And then, of course, just an ongoing thank you to all those people that hang out, lurk, donate, gift, all the good stuff. You guys are absolutely amazing. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But all right, that is going to do it with our housekeeping stuff, which means we're going to go into our announcements, but draft championship. We have the draft championship coming up this weekend, finally showing some love to the draft community, where we're going to have some slots given to us to participate in the World's Championship. Alex, mind breaking down the details for that, my friend?
Yeah, let me pull it up here. So it's this weekend. It's pretty exciting. All right, so the 2020 Eternal Draft Championship this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. It's a way for 4 draft players to get into the Worlds event. Open to anyone who has at least 5 draft championship points, and the last month having been June, I think. 34 players already qualified for Sunday, so we're playing for 30 spots. And the event is Saturday, August 29th, so that's this Saturday at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. Is that your time, John, I think? So that would be
Yes.
8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, and then it's also 1500 UTC. And then it runs for 9 hours, so from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. MDT. And then You're going to play 3 drafts during that time. You you can play your games anytime during the qualifiers. There's no benefit or penalty for playing early, late, or throughout. If you play later, we do believe the tiebreaker thing will happen with these games, so you might have better tiebreakers. Make sure you give yourself enough time, because that is 21 games. It's going to be 7 draft runs, 7-game draft runs, like whatever, 4-3, 6-1, 7-0, and then you're going to play a total of 21 games. All the games are single elimination, and the best records will join the others for the finals on Sunday. And then, spot at Worlds, the top 4. There's some money involved. Yeah, it's going to be a good time. I can't wait. I'm pretty excited about it.
First place takes home $1,000, an invite to World, 16 packs, 1 premium legendary, and then they automatically get the top tier expedition card back.
They're broadcasting on Sunday too.
We encourage as many people as possible to go ahead and play. They are Swiss rounds, so you're going to get to play all 21 games, all 3 drafts, which is fun, but it's free packs. You get to keep all the cards that you draft. So even if you're not a limited player and you just somehow accidentally got your 5 points, I definitely encourage everyone to play, because it's just gonna be fun. I'll be streaming my run, so you guys can definitely check that out on said Saturday. I obviously won't be streaming on Sunday, so everyone can watch the day 2 event. But yeah, I definitely encourage everyone. Just for showing up, you're gonna get 3 packs, 200 card back points, and a premium legendary. You get that on top of the cards you get from your 3 drafts. So what is that essentially? 4 packs, 7 packs total, plus a premium legendary. You can't beat that.
Can't beat it with the stick.
A changey stick. All right, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into our pack 1 pick 1. Starting off with you, John. Today's pack 1 pick 1 is brought to us by Doc28, that submitted in the Misplay Discord, our friendly sister podcast, brother podcast, since we're all dudes. Another great Eternal podcast that you should definitely check out. They do their show every other week. Gato Sujo and Parmley on there, absolutely fantastic guests on the show. All right, so this one, at the comment section, we have Shifting Illusion, we have a Brightling, we have Shatter, Ancient Machinist, Battery Mage, Hardy Warrior, Reflection, and Enter the Monastery. Which ones are you looking at here, John?
Yeah, these commons are pretty medium. I think the only one I'm really looking at, I guess, is Ancient Machinist.
Okay. Any particular reason why?
I mean, I'm not even really looking at that one. These commons are all like not cards I really want to first pick.
Okay, fair enough.
So,
Alex, our uncommons though are actually quite spicy. We have Greenstone Officer, the 2/2 Paladin for 2 triple justice, lifesteal, and imbue. Pay 2 and exhaust Greenstone Officer to imbue her with one of your units if she's not already imbued. Oni Battle Driver is a 3/3 Oni for 4 fire. Once per turn, you may pay 2 to give one of your other units +1 attack and overwhelm for each of your units. Sacrifice it at the end of the turn. And finally, Imprison, a fast spell for 6 Shadow. The enemy player must choose and sacrifice 2 units, gain double fire or double primal influence. What do you think, Alex?
I like all of these cards, actually. The Imprison's gone up a lot for me. I like the fast spell aspect of that. The Greenstone Officer is a great card. We all love Justice, but I think out of these cards, I would take the Oni Battle Driver. Just on a feeling that basically Fire has been more open for me than Justice, so I would lean towards that and take the Oni Battle Driver. It just wins games. It's a great card.
Okay, sending it back over to you, John. We have our rare. This is the 0/1 Rogue Learned Imitator. Or is it Learned Imitator? Which one is it this time?
I think you could say it either way, I think.
Yeah, I think in this case you can kind of say it either way. I don't know. Either way, I'm gonna say pass on that because that is not playable in draft.
All right, just for our listeners, it is a 4-cost 5 primal influence. Rogue, summon, transform learned in Imitator into a unit of your choice with cost 5 or less from your deck and set it to its attack to 0. Yeah, nope. Not a thing. I can't think of off the top of my... I guess you can copy your Oni battle driver, but...
Yeah, for activated abilities, or like, I mean, if if you're in a Felm deck and you have like Champion of Cunning in your deck, like that's like a card that's worth maybe copying, but man, that's like so not first pickable. It's so niche. Like, no, thank you.
Yeah, essentially that's for those of you that are looking at it, trying to figure out what you even use it for. It's exactly that. You're copying the text box, the rules text of another card. When that box is worth copying or having 2 of, then that's where you play Imitator. But even then, you're kind of pushing it. Okay.
And it doesn't work on summon effects. Only things like already in play.
Correct. Yeah, because it's her summon effect, so she's not gonna do it till she's already in play. So yeah, actually, and ironically, the project that's working on over at shiftstone.com actually mimics what my initial response was to this pack, which is what you went with as well, Alex. I think all 3 uncommons are solid. Between the 3 of them, I think it's closer to, I think Battle Driver and Officer are clearly above Imprison. And then I think they're both good, and I personally lean towards Officer just because I think Officer is great. But in the bigger scheme of things, both of them win games, but you require a little bit of setup with Officer versus Battle Driver. You can kind of win just by doing what your deck already wants to do for the most part. Obviously, you're not trading off units as aggressively when you have a Battle Driver in your deck, because the more units, the wider your board, the better Battle Driver gets. But I think Battle Driver is a little more flexible in that area and can win more games on its own. The other thing to it, just because it is our pack 1 pick 1, it's triple Justice influence versus a single Fire influence. And as we'll talk about here in a minute, it's a little bit easier to splash that 3rd color in this current format. So yeah, I think I would slam the Oni Battle Driver here. John, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you guys have said it all, but I just really like Greenstone Officer, and I think that would still be my pick regardless of what you guys said. Like, I'm just too high on that card to pass on it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that is 100% defensible, and I would even consider it myself as well.
Yeah, it's
depending on my mood, it might even be that card.
I think you like exactly what you said is correct right now. Like I witnessed a few drafts earlier today, and Justice was getting cut from like the first pick. I swear every draft I saw like today, the first card taken was a common, and I mean I can't think of anything else other than Siphoner Paladin, because Justice was also being cut like in all those packs. So like, yeah, like what you said is true, but I'd still risk it.
Yeah, I mean it's a good enough card, especially if you are in that color.
Yeah.
Yep, fair enough. There's absolutely no issues with that. So yeah, either one is defensible picks here, but that's why I liked it. I thought it was pretty nice to have triple uncommons that were all perfectly fine picks, and I wanted to break it down for everyone. So that's our pack 1 pick 1. So we're gonna go ahead and dive right into our main topic, which is once again giving you the quick down and dirty breakdown of some of the key points of the current draft format and meta. So you guys are able to get a little bit of a heads up, if not already, watching all the various draft streamers. I feel like we've had quite a few draft streamers pop up now, which has been great. So you could definitely get your fill of information watching them. But yeah, that's pretty much the breakdown. So we're gonna do our thing. We got really good feedback last time we did this, so we're gonna try to do this at least once for every format. Or set, correct? Set, not really format. And yeah, so starting it off, first off, Mantle of Justice is bad. Don't put it in any of your decks. Leave it alone. Never touch it in the pack. It's just horrible. All right, no, I'm just kidding. That card is absolutely awesome. If you are heavy Justice, this card, I think Mantle of Justice is the 4-cost attachment that it gives weapon. I'm sorry, 4-cost weapon that gives a unit a +1/+1 equal to your Justice influence. Downside to this card is that it is susceptible to getting blown out by silence, but the upside is that you can absolutely just make a unit huge with this, with the addition of symbols and just going potentially mono Justice or even a very heavy Justice deck with a splash. It combos once again very well with Huru because you have a way to give it overwhelm or evasion. I think if you're giving a unit a permanent +3/+3 is probably the floor with this card, but you can easily give it a +12/+12 if the game goes on long enough.
Yep, we're not ever going to get through 50 and 50. So Changey Stick is worth splashing for. Draft them, put as many of them in your deck as you want. They're ×10, so you're going to see them a lot, and yeah, it's a great card.
They don't call it Splashy Stick for no reason.
Splashy Stick.
Yeah. And also either Might Weaver or Spirit Weaver, and also Battle Driver, like together. So either of those first 2 cards plus Battle Driver, that's like a solid win con right there for any deck in those colors.
Yeah, just being able to Battle Driver give something +5 or 5 or more attack equals that you're either getting lifesteal off that unit before it dies, or it's double damage and you're forcing your opponent to block it. Those both combo very well. Spellbound Ursines are absolutely solid picks in any kind of primal deck. The fact that they have Overwhelm really pushes it over. If they get rid of the unit that's imbued on, you still get a 3/3, so you don't feel horrible about it. But the fact that, once again, it has Overwhelm means that they are forced to block it and they cannot chump block it. So it makes it a very solid pick in most primal-based decks.
All right, and 3-color is a lot more viable now, a true splash. With the seats being ×10, you're seeing those a lot more often, even in the uncommon slot. The Chance, Seeks, Trailmaker.
2 drops. Very important. I know that almost goes without saying, but like I think the format was a little more dirty at first, but people have definitely figured out the aggro decks a little more, and you can get run over very easily these days. So don't neglect your 2-drop slot.
So speaking of 2-drops, the Evangels are absolutely fantastic. Them being a solid 2-drop with upside and giving the additional ability to either fix or trigger surge mechanics is just a great card. You're happy to have them regardless of the faction. They all have a place in their respective decks, and also giving you that additional influence if you are trying to play those 4 influence cost cards.
All right, Combre is an okay faction to be in, but it does lack some reach.
I mean, it can. I think it's just something you should be aware of while you're drafting Combre. Like, make sure your deck has some reach, because that can be a pitfall. I agree with that.
The reach in that is like just some relic synergies for me, especially with
dive bombs and I like to be in the heavy justice Combre where I'm drafting those like 4/4 flyers in justice, like things like that. But like in general, like that can be the pitfall for like Combre decks. So
or just keep attacking your opponent early, so they're forced to make aggressive blocks, and then your bigger guys can not get.
And hopefully that deck has combat tricks or whatever, so you can do that. But that's kind of like reach. So you want to be able to push damage in Combre. That can be a pitfall. The next one, Darkfire, is a fantastic finisher, along with Flashfire. Like, I even while I'm drafting, I still forget sometimes Darkfire goes face. Like every other draft, I remember. Don't forget, y'all.
Yeah, you'll remember as soon as you're sitting at 9. You're sitting at 9 life, thinking like, all right, I've stabilized, and then they just Darkfire your face after a Fire Cat or whatever it's called.
It lets you race without a care in the world if you have one of those in your hand, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're Stone Scar, so you get the lifesteal on it. It's huge.
Well, exactly.
All the mono faction decks are very much viable in this format with the critical mass of solid picks. That when you are deciding to dive into mono faction, i.e. the same faction is open in both packs, you do have to be considered you still have to consider the fact that you're potentially lowering the power level of your deck a little bit for overall efficiency. So make it a point to identify whether you're just taking bad cards or you are actually able to go solid mono faction. But all 5 of them are completely viable in this current format.
All right, with the amount of attacking and blocking that we're doing, combat tricks are very solid here, and they are plentiful. They are around, so you got to watch for them.
Yeah, they're boosted. Lots of combat tricks in the format. We got Reality Snap, Vengeful Flight, Arcanum Battery. Those are like huge game-changing plays that can, just some things that can really swing the tide of a game in this format. Things to watch out for, things to consider, like holding up counterplay for if it's getting to that point in the game where you think your opponent may be on that kind of strategy.
Yeah, Vengeful Flight just making 2 huge flyers is just so much value, potentially 4 later on. And the same thing with Reality Snap. The revenge on both those cards is just absolutely backbreaking. Reality Snap bouncing 2 things mid combat and then coming back later, you're just like, oh, such a tempo swing. Number 13, Siphoner Paladin is still good regardless of what deck and is fine as just a 1/5 on 3. The card is just so good. It gives you a weapon. Sometimes it can completely throw off your opponent's curve because you have a 3/3 weapon that can kill their 2-drop, and then now their 3-drop would potentially be dead in the water as soon as you play it. And then yeah, sometimes against aggressive decks, you don't have to necessarily sack something, your 2 or 3 drop. You just play it as a 1/5 and it protects you quite well, soaking up a ton of damage so your opponent burns a combat trick to get rid of it. Finest Hour and Conjuring are 10 times boosted, so it's better if you can chain them to get your Siphoner Paladin weapons to get bigger and bigger as you go, which is an obvious play we've seen sometimes. Making a 6/6 weapon on turn 4 is backbreaking.
You got me to chuckle on that one.
So playing 4 faction cards from 2 separate factions is stretching it. I know it can be very tempting to do it. Like a good example is a Disappear and the Tinker, the 4/4 flyer from Justice that gives you 4 armor as well.
Smuggling.
Most decks aren't going to have both of those cards in there, and sometimes you got to make the adult decision during the draft, during your deck building, and know which way your deck would want to lean if you have both of those cards in your pool.
Yeah, I agree completely. So I'd say Plunder is always good and worth the suboptimal body it comes on, which I think they all are. Worst case, you gain a little life, i.e. chump block with it, and you turn a power, that you didn't need in that game anymore into a 2-cost chance at a real card.
Yeah, it's a little frustrating that the bodies are a little underpowered, but that's the price you pay for efficiency and consistency in your deck. Even the card that you're on now, the bird, the 03 bird that I'm drawing a blank on, the guard, is not too bad just because it could block 2/2s fairly well. I still
Boulder Gate guard. I liked it before. It just got buffed to have Plunder, so yeah, even better.
Yeah, I would probably say the 2 best ones is probably the Deputy and the Clergy, with the Clergy being the clear front runner just because of the fact that it's good at any point in the game versus Deputy kind of stinks later in the game.
Yeah, I'm not that big on Deputy.
Yeah, it just has the ability of becoming a viable unit. It becomes a 3/1 or a 4/1. It can actually trade or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
All right, number 16, locking in a solid color pack 1 is pretty much the best thing you can do. It just puts you in a good spot where you have a good idea of what you're going to get past roughly in pack 4, and you're more or less completely open to pick your second or splash color in packs 2 and 3. So you really want to try to lock up an open color in pack 1 and hold on to that for dear life going into pack 2.
You can't lock in your solid color during pack 1. Second best option is picking the best card through all of pack 1, trying to stay open a little bit, and then figuring that out in the following packs. This is not preferred, but it is always an option.
If you do end up doing that, make sure you keep still try and figure out what seemed to be open in pack 1.
Yeah, looking somewhere like your picks 4 through 8.
Yeah. Next one is Corrosive Dagger. Yeah, like even if you're not just a heavy mono fire deck or whatever, I think it's still fine if you're just planning on daggering and making 2 rustlings. I think you're very happy every time you play that card. Still, like that's a solid card.
Yeah, giving decay to a unit has just proven to be extremely powerful, making cards that we normally wouldn't be very high on slightly better or even a lot better.
I think it's gotten better since the format shakeup too, because like we mentioned, those combat tricks are even more prevalent, and decay is just a nice insurance policy against that otherwise blowout from getting tricked.
Yep, very good point indeed. Number 19, strangers are much better now that there are less of them running around. I was one of those people that disliked taking the very powerful strangers at the 2 and 3 drop slot because of the fact that there were so many running around. There was the chance that you can help your opponent. Now that strangers are no longer pushed, I think they are extremely good because there's a higher chance that only you are getting the benefit from them. And so yeah, mag stranger is absolutely phenomenal, as well as some of the other ones.
Metal typically overperforms. It's a great spell to leave up for 1 to trigger your blaze blur haze worms. And there's just a lot of big units that people will triple or quadruple block to kill, and when you metal, it's kind of game over. It's a lot of power out of a one cost spell.
And piggybacking off of what John says, it also counteracts decay.
Indeed.
The card Curtain Call, it's a 3 fast spell. What is it? Double shadow or
Correct.
single shadow?
Double shadow.
Double shadow.
And then I think it's 4 time on the text box. If you have 4 time, you give 2 units life steal, and is it all your units get invulnerable no matter what, right?
Yeah, your units can't die this turn. It's worded, I think.
Oh, sorry, not invulnerable, right? Yeah, it's just your units can't die this turn. So yeah, like that card. I mean, it's obviously great, right? So even if you're not in Xenon though and don't get the lifesteal, I still think that's like a very strong limited card. Like if you're playing Shadow at all, I think I'd still play Curtain Call.
It is 4 time influence to get and it's the units cannot die clause. You always get the +2 and lifesteal.
Okay, I had it backwards. Okay. Understood. So.
But yeah, it's huge in a racing scenario too. You just completely blow out your opponent, getting in 4 extra damage plus a ton of lifesteal. It's a very powerful card, I think, regardless.
All right.
Next up, there's no such thing as too many finest hours. And yeah, I mean, I don't think you guys disagree with me, right? You can run up to like 6 of these things. It's just super efficient.
Yeah, because I think like the first one, it's like, surely you don't have a finest hour, and then everyone after that, it's like, surely you don't have another one. It's like,
yeah, +3.
It just works every time.
+3/+3 for a single justice influence and a single power. And obviously it doesn't go up very well against decay, but everything else, it's just so easy to leave up, so efficient. It's good on defense, it's good on offense, and exactly what you said, John. The more of them you have, the less likely your opponent is to play around them.
Yeah, they stack really well. Conjurings, they're pushed. There's a lot of windvoking going on. I have won many games and lost many games because of the insane cards that are coming out of the windvokes. Yeah, it makes for a kind of Wild Wild West format a little bit sometimes with those, but it goes both ways. Can't complain.
If you're not a windvoker, you're a joker. We also got Dive Bomb. Yeah, I think Dive Bomb's even better now than maybe it was before. I don't know. I personally like it more lately. It just wins games. It's a way for your otherwise hard to push damage Combrei deck to push some damage, for example.
It's very difficult to play around on defense as well, or when you're attacking into it as well, because it's just so much health, right? +4 health is just huge.
Yeah, it's just solid.
For those of you that have been drafting for a little bit, Book Club Yeti is nowhere near as powerful as it once was. Book Club Yeti is the 3/1/2 drop in Primal, which used to be very good because you can tack it on as a kill spell later in the game. But sadly, there's just not enough relics to make this thing viable anymore. Now, granted, if you do pick up a Conjurer's Wand or a Siege Provision, even then, Siege Provisions only gives you 2 damage. So yeah, Book Club Yeti is a trap. If you need a 2-drop, it's fine, but it's definitely not the high pick it was in previous formats.
Yeah, that card's fallen a lot. The next card, on the other hand, is not. Biting Winds is better than ever. It's like the mythic common. I never see this card. But yeah, it's great. It's splashable. Yeah, good card.
The card, is it Cutbrush Cartographer?
Yes.
Yeah, so that card, it is fantastic in Huru. Huru has a lot of ways to give it evasion and draw cards, and yeah, that's a solid finisher in a Huru deck in this format.
Its leaping ability is mighty, yes.
Yes.
It's so good, and you just keep seeing it tick up, and you're like, oh god, I'm gonna have to deal with this thing eventually.
Just I keep seeing opponents sometimes imbue on it, and that always feels bad. I like watch it growing on their board and doing nothing. I'm like, no, what do you, your guy could be attacking. This is making me sad.
Yep. Valley Clan Sage is the 05 for 2 and is fine as an 05 blocker. I highly discourage you from attempting to draw, and I focus on attempting to draw cards with this. The it's not for pay for draw card. It's not a loot. You're not drawing a card and discarding. You are literally just taking the top card of your deck and throwing it into your void 90% of the time. You can go in depth about all the things. Once again, it's not a loot. You're not getting to keep every card. So I don't know, John, would you say that you want to have something like 12 or 13 spells in your deck for this thing to consistently draw you a card?
Least, right? Like if you're wanting to like play that and like actively use it during an average game, I think your deck wants to have like, I don't know, man, like you've got like what, like 10 units or less, and then all the rest of your like units and stuff are spell based units, like mobilizations and things like that. Like, you know what I mean? Your deck just has so many spells that's like just actually solid. Yep. Right? And like of course it goes way up with revenge too, because that like just stuffs the top layer of your deck with more spells. So like there is a possibility to draft a deck in the format where it's like actually good to activate this, except for the situations where you're desperate. I always see people activating this card when they're just desperate, and I mean I've just never seen it actually draw cards in a meaningful way.
Yep. So you pretty much want it as an 05 blocker, and even then, if you're any kind of aggressive Skycrag deck or some kind of primal deck that wants to be aggressive, then you even still don't want this card because an 05 doesn't attack. It is a little less good because of decay in the format, so they can slowly chip away at it, but it still blocks quite a few things in the format, similar to Siphoner.
Reconnaissance with Berserk is a sweet spot. It will win you the game out of nowhere. Just make sure if you have the Berserk unit out, if you have Reconnaissance in your deck, just be smart and save it to get the killing blow in.
Right. The card Flame Bathe Reformation, it's like a relic, lets you sacrifice and put those battle skills, or it just turns it into a exalted weapon basically to put on something else, right? That card really wants a very battle skill intensive deck for it to function properly, and so that's only available now in pack 2 and 3, and like by then it's already too late really to do a build around. Like that card's gone way down for me personally. I don't know about you guys.
It's like gone down slightly from the last format where we had battle skills kind of everywhere, but it's still great.
It's still great, yeah. Okay.
Number 31, because of all the heavy influence requirements that we see in this format and Triggering Surge, the tokens are still great even if you are only in 2 colors. Just consider them fixing. They only give you obviously the 1 influence out of the 2, but if you are running, let's say for example, 3 influence cards on one faction and 4 on the other, which is still pretty greedy, tokens will allow you to kind of get there later on. You're like, okay, I'm missing the 4th influence for fire. You can select that option on the token. So yeah, they're still great fixing. Just understand they do have the slight downside of potentially throwing off your curve if you need to play them in an awkward part in it, because they are depleted at all times.
So the tokens kind of lead you to be able to play the next cards, which are the displays. They're even more powerful now. I've gotten so blown out because you don't play around them. It's just you don't think your opponent has it, and then they blow you out. So watch out for those. And if you could play it, do it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that makes displays even more difficult to read is the fact that there are those cards in the format that give you influence from other factions, either or. So people just randomly have a 3rd influence, and you just throw it up to, oh yeah, they played the Seed or they played Unbreakable Tradition. Then all of a sudden they have the display and blow you out.
That's a good point. Next tip we have here: symbols are high picks for both main color and splashes. Yeah, like I think as the format's gone on, I keep going higher and higher on my pick order for symbols. They're great, very good in the format.
Yeah, and they do open up splashes of double influence requirements just because of the fact that in one card you're getting double influence. So I don't think it's 100% a replacement. You still have to take that in consideration, but it definitely makes those double splashes very, and by double I mean double influence, not two different factions. Splashes significantly easier.
Mm-hmm.
Number 34, the From cycle are all great in their transmute faction forms. Yeah, and so these are the rares that you see from Beyond, from etc. etc. They have their spell aspect on the front side, and then if you have triple influence from two other opposite factions, then they transmute into a bomb unit, and they're all exactly that, bomb units. I think if I remember correctly, 3 of the From cycle are playable on their front sides and 2 of them are not, but then all of them are great on the transmutation side.
Sounds about right.
So if you have a Tavrod, you should look into drafting Audacious Ruse. It works great with that. By great, we mean potentially one-sided board wipe. So yeah, it's a really good card to go with Tavrod.
Yeah, like put it way up in your pick order once you've already got that Tavrod, and play like 2 or 3 easy, right? Like,
yeah,
it's just so good.
And I still like having at least one in the deck. I think it's a pretty good blowout, especially when you're on defense, because you could start double and triple blocking things, and then just ruse to so you don't lose anything. I think it's an extremely powerful card.
You do need to adjust your pick order though, because I think like so many times you'll like take something else over that first ruse thinking you'll get another one, and you just don't, and then you'll feel so bad not having that ruse with Tavrod because it is just so good. All right, next one, 36. We've got Chain Whip Bludgeoner plus Badge of Honor wins games.
I've seen it. I've done it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just attacks as a 5/7. Like, it's huge.
Like, because it has Aegis, it's a great thing to put Badge of Honor on, but like it works, they go together even if you don't put it on it, right? You put it on a different unit, it's still, if they're all attacking, it still gets the surge like as it's attacking, buffs it. It's great.
Yep. Badge of Honor has gone down a little bit for me. Just a little bit, not much. But I remember people were picking them up very aggressively. And I think the format has adjusted to where the unit you put it on isn't backbreaking, but it's still a very good card. And yeah, any time you can put it on a unit that has a surge activation, it just gets even better. Number 37, Inspiring Leadership is a good card. This is the 3-cost relic that when it's in play, anytime you play a unit, you are able to change the stats of a unit in play to match the ones of the unit you are playing. For God's sake, please be careful when you're doing this with an imbue unit, because it does this triggers first, then the imbue, because I've definitely done it. I've seen other people do it. I think you've done it as well, John, during the learning curve, where you're playing your 1/1 official, and then you click your 3/5 Caravan Guard, and then all of a sudden it becomes a 1/1, and then it's like, so what do you want to imbue on? And you're just face palming. So be careful. Read what it's asking you, because the animations look exactly the same. So
slow it down a little bit.
Be careful with this card. Because it could be a complete blowout or it could be a complete punt. But Inspiring Leadership is a very good card. Turning your earlier 2/2s and 1/1s and 1/2s into 3/3s and 5/5s is extremely powerful.
So in case you didn't know, Cloud Snake Mount was awesome. Let me tell you that it's double awesome. It's just a great card. It's first pickable. It's a card that tells me Primal is open if I see it late.
It has literally gotten double awesome since the format changed too, because I keep seeing so many more precision plunges, and I keep seeing touch of battle. Like, those are all very boosted right now, so it's so easy to give this thing deadly, which makes it like amazing.
Yes.
Number 39. I keep seeing people do it. I don't know why. Don't play Reflection. Don't do it. Stop.
I thank them.
Yeah, you are the one that's spending the power. You are the one that's spending the card to give your opponent 2 cards for free. It just, there's no way you're going to win that. Even if you have a bunch of spell matters synergies, you're still giving your opponent 1 or 2 free cards. Number 40. Imprison is better than it seems. We talked about it on the pack one pick one. Yeah, normally giving your opponent the choice of sacking a card doesn't work out in your favor. But the fact that Imprison forces your opponent to sack 2 cards and does it at fast speed makes this card surprisingly better than what we're used to. So I think this card has overperformed the community expectations as a whole, just because, yeah, the combination of it being 2 units and once again it being at fast speed really changes up the math. And then you get the upside, of course, it giving you influence, double influence that you may need to trigger surges or splash or etc, etc. So yeah, Imprison is definitely better than it seems.
When you have it in your hand, you like play it kind of as if you have a board wipe, like trying to manipulate the board so your opponent's going to have like their 2 units. They think they're good with their 2 awesome units left, and then you hit them with one of those. So yeah, I love that card. It's really gone up for me.
Or it blows out double blocks as well. If your opponent has 3 or 4 units and they do some double blocks and then you do Imprison before damage happens, it normally saves your units and just blows out your opponent there.
That messes everything up.
It's still not just amazing like every game, because there is like a whole strategy in the format of like going wide, but that's like, you know, a relatively small percentage of the decks you run into. So I think it's mostly good. You guys are on point there.
All right, so there's a couple of targets that you don't want to silence for sure, which would be the Prism Golem. You're going to give your opponent a 7/7. And Prism Golem is a serviceable 3/3. If you can somehow silence your own, that's pretty awesome. Don't silence your opponent's Caravan Guards. So, if, you know, Silent Hysteria, if your opponent has a board of those, don't cast that spell.
I mean, I had a board where I had to cast a Silent Hysteria one time, and my opponent had 2 Prism Golems. I was so sad.
Oh no!
Like there was some, you know, some flyer or whatever that was just killing me, and I literally had to play it. You know, it like bought me a turn, but like I still died eventually. That felt real bad. All right, next 42. How to play with Broker, and so we're talking about Wasteland Broker, like. So I think the best way to make use of this card is to basically, like, as a general rule of thumb, put your best card in the market. There's some exceptions there, but I think for the most part, like, that's a pretty safe rule of thumb. Like, you know, sometimes it doesn't work out. Like maybe if you have 2 copies of your best card somehow, obviously that's not going to go in the market. And then there's like, if you never really get one of those like awesome broker cards, there's like some other cards that are really good for broker markets, you know, like things that draw cards are way at the top of the list, you know, things that cantrip, like do something while cycling themselves in
Conjurings.
some way. Yeah, the conjurings are great, exactly, but like that's something like if you're in a, you know, like I'm finding if you know, say Justice is open, I'll get 2 win conjurings. Well, then you never want to do a broker market for that. You'd rather just have 2 in the main deck, I think.
The other thing to consider as well is that sometimes it's not correct to pull the broker card out of your market because, for example, if it's something like a Hellkite that costs 7 and you're stuck at 4 power, pulling 5 or 4 of those on the top of your deck could essentially mess up your power.
Yeah. If you're like playing broker because you're like getting run over by an aggro deck or something, like don't get greedy and stuff your deck full of your like Jedi said, your 7-drop that you can't play right now. Like just because you're playing your broker now, like just, you know, play it like you have to as a 4/4/4. That's fine. This is draft. That's fine.
Speaking of greedy, World Pyre is a card that's been seeing a lot of play in Constructed, but sadly it is not as good in Limited. The reason being is World Pyre gives you card advantage by cheating a ton of power cost, right? Playing these 9, 10, 12 cost spells for 4. That's where you get your advantage. You don't have that kind of card advantage or bomb cards in Limited, so the payoff for paying World Pyre isn't strong enough to take essentially your turn 4 off. So as much as if you want to take it for a collection, that's great, but you really don't want to be playing it in Limited.
I saw like one of the devs, BK himself, play, draft a World Pirate deck the other day. It went like I'm pretty sure it was 0-3. Like it was just so bad. He was like drafting like off-color conjurings so he could play with World Pirate. It's like you have to draw it in that game, and then you know what I mean. Like you're just setting yourself up for failure because your whole deck doesn't function without this one card.
Don't spin your wheels and slam every beseech that you see in the draft into your deck. I don't really think you need too many of these cards. Make one or maybe two. You can really just kind of be doing a whole lot of nothing if you have too many beseeches in your hand.
And just for clarification, it's Beseech the Throne.
Beseech the Throne. Sorry, the 2 colorless or factionless spell that lets you draw a card and then you plunder.
Momentum builder. Like I put that in basically every draft I've ever seen it passed to me. It's such a good card. It's like a 0-10 reckless, but every time it attacks, it grows its attack and lowers its health. But the thing is it can only attack if you manage to buff its attack, right? Like 0 attack things can't attack in Eternal. So I think you do have to keep that in mind. Like you can't just literally slam it in every deck. I mean, it is a 0-10 wall can still block literally everything. But I mean, you really want this thing to be smashing people. So I think, be mindful of that and draft at minimum 4 ways to get that thing started in your deck.
Number 46, you can drop to 16 power if your curve stops at 4. Maybe have 1 or 2 5s in your deck with Plunder. So Plunder has given us the ability to go lower or higher on power in your deck. I personally am one person that leans towards going higher, but you are able, especially if you have the more aggressive decks that we've seen in this format, you are able to go lower to an extent, because sometimes those aggressive decks like Rakano want you to still hit those influence surge triggers. But Plunder does give you the ability to go a little bit lower as long as you're willing to aggressively plunder cards away to make sure you hit your 4th power.
I would say the beseeches, not beseeches, but the etchings also help you put less power in your deck, but it's a very risky thing to do. Apprentice Mage, it's a higher pick than you might think. It's one of those 2 drops. Don't take it for granted. It's going to help you ramp. And they're going kind of late for some reason. It's a really good 2 drop.
It also combos really well playing Apprentice on 2 to go into a Blur Haze Worm on 4 or 3. I'm sorry.
Number 48. I think this is like a tip for any Eternal draft format, but I think it's especially true here. Always build yourself a market with some leftover cards that you drafted, like even if you can't otherwise access it with your deck. Like if you have ways in your deck to steal cards in some way, or especially if you have ways to invoke, which I think a lot of decks should have at least one way to invoke, I think, with boosted conjurings at uncommon in packs 2 and 3. For example, like if I'm playing Justice and playing Wind Conjuring, like I'd love to have a leftover Justice card of some sort, and also I'd prioritize having a leftover 3-drop specifically, doesn't matter the color, whether it's Justice or my other faction, in my market for a potential Justice etching or a crescendo off of a Windvoke from my Wind Conjuring. That way, like, and like, I've literally gotten crescendo before in draft games. Like, that's like, even if you forgot, I think you still are gonna grab that, fast speed, give your unit flying card, right? That's gonna be great in any draft game. So like, you might as well plan ahead for that and just go ahead and have the foresight to put some of those leftover cards in a market, even if you can't otherwise access it. It's just a best practice.
If we don't make it in 50 minutes, it's your fault, John.
Thank you.
That was a really good breakdown for a really next level tip.
Yep.
I concur.
It comes up more often than you might think.
No, absolutely. I don't even think to do it. I just learned something.
Yeah, and like, don't forget, y'all, like the way the rules for markets work, you can always put a sigil in there.
So teleport, it's a pretty good card in this format because you can really mess things up on your opponent's side with that card, more so than normal with Imbue going on. But it plays really good with Blur Haze Worm because it lets you draw extra cards even more times because you can replay your Blur Haze Worm after teleporting it.
I think there's even more just weapons since the last balance change too. So I think that just makes teleport better as a defensive play too. In general, that's pretty good. So yeah, I guess our last one here, number 50. This is something I would say is like, I don't see a lot of people really doing this, but it's just a tip I have for the format. Like, don't count imbue cards as units while you're doing your drafting and deck building. Like for me, I put most of those under the weapon category for me. So like if your average deck you want like say 18 units, well, 3 of those are, if you just glance over at your list and you're like, oh, I've got 18 units. Well, it turns out, 2 of them are Blur Haze Worms and 3 of them are, Earth Signs. Well, really, you only got 13 units. Because those on an unfavorable board state, those cards basically do nothing, which to me that's not a unit, right? So like that's what I mean by you don't count them as units, right? Like because there's a risk involved there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point. Well done, John.
Point. Yeah, that was good.
All right, well, that's it. That's our 50 tips in 50 minutes for the current draft format of Argent Depths, which you guys will be participating in the championship this weekend. Good luck and Godspeed to everyone that plays, and I hope you all have a fun time. I look forward to seeing you guys compete in day 2. That's our main topic, which means we are going into our What's the Play this week. Our What's the Play is a little more straightforward, plays out a little bit more like a puzzle. It was submitted by a good member of the community, Satan Clauses. Posted this one up in the Discord for submission. And like we said in previous podcasts, if you do have any What's the Plays that you think are interesting or had trouble navigating, please post them on the Discord and we'd be happy to discuss them on the podcast. Of course, you can catch this one once again on the video version on YouTube. You can check out the display on the screen if you're a more visual learner. Our opponent is Praxis with 0 of 8 power open. We are Stone Scar, which with 5 of 5 power open. They're at late 8 life, and sadly in this screenshot, I can't see his life total because he had his cards expanded for us to see. I'm assuming on mobile it looks like, so I can't tell you what our life total is. But the board state, our opponent has a 3/3 deadly, the Yeti, I forgot what it's called, the Rider, Steam Rider or something like that. They have the 8/8 Giant, the 4/6 with Overwhelm, Sentinel, Walker, Glass something.
Sandblast?
Sandblast Sentinel? Yeah, that sounds about right. That when you play a spell, it gets a +4/+4. Or I'm sorry, +4/+0, becoming an 8/6 Overwhelm. And then a 1/1 Grenadin. They are at 8 life once again. I don't know where we're at. Our board consists of a 5/2 unblockable Tentaclesis and a 5/3 Overwhelm Brawler. In our hand, there's a Skyfire Hellkite, the 7/4 Flying Dragon for 7 Fire, and summon. Each one of your units deals 1 damage to the opponent. Towering Arachnid is the 5/2 for 2 Shadow, that when it is summoned, you have to sacrifice a unit and you get to then plunder. Piercing Shot is the slow spell for 2 and a fire, and it deals 2 damage to a target unit and then 2 damage to that unit's owner. And Fervent Siphoner is a 1/2 cultist for 2 Shadow as exalted, and then whenever a card is discarded, regardless of whether you do it or your opponent does it, it gets a +1 attack this turn for each card discarded. So once again, this one plays out like a puzzle because we all believe that there is exactly 1 line to victory here. And so, John, go ahead and break it down for us.
The board state's looking a little rough. It looks like we've probably been beaten down here. I'm going to assume our life total is low. We're in a tight spot here, but luckily we have the tools to close this out. Our opponent's got, 0 mana available, so I feel like we should just go for it if we have it. And it looks like we could play our Fervent Siphoner here. Then we could play the Arachnid to sacrifice it. You could then put the 1/2 weapon on our unblockable Tentaclesis, making it a
6/4.
6/4. Yeah, and then when you play that, you also plunder this Hellkite, which obviously we're at 5 power. We're never getting to 7 here. So we just plunder the Hellkite, so we can also then play this Piercing Shot. which would deal 2 damage to the opponent's face, making our 6 attack Telekinesis very much lethal. Without a care in the world, since the opponent doesn't have the ability to do anything.
Yep, exactly. And I actually liked including this because this, this is almost a pre-designed puzzle, right? Our opponent is tapped out, so we don't have to worry about fast spells. You're using literally every card in your hand to include cashing in one of your win cons and finding a path to lethal. And there's a couple of ways you can mess this up, right? You can easily not get the extra power, or you can easily just plunder the Siphoner and not get the extra +1. There's a couple of things you can't go wrong with the piercing shot, but I mean, it's a slightly convoluted line. I think all three of us caught it very quickly, but maybe we're just used to playing limited. But regardless, once again, it was a viewer submitted one, so I definitely wanted to get it on there. And I do like the fact that maybe for our newer players, it might show them despite that Hellkite is a really good win con, you've missed power quite a bit since we're stuck on 5. They've already gotten up to 8. That you just need to find that line, and where you might be looking grim here, if you really took a minute to take a look at it, you can steal the win.
I think being in a tight spot helps you see lines like this, right? You're like, well, am I just dead here? Wait, I'm not.
It is a lesson in sequencing. You have to do it exactly right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because I could see this on stream, me talking about this play and then immediately playing the Towering Arachnid without playing the Siphoner first and just botching the whole plan up.
Right. Yeah, you can't then piercing shot your own Siphoner. It won't work.
Yep. So, all right, that's our what to play once again. Thank you so much, Satan Clauses, for submitting this one for us to talk about the show. Kind of a quick one, but like I said, this one was a little more direct. Just an interesting line of using all your cards and whatnot. All right, that's going to take us into our constructed corner for the week. And do we have a big brain brew for you? This one comes from our very own brewer, Johnholio, and this is the Keeholio Flowchart Greedholio deck. I dubbed. I'm sure you just call it Kilo.
Holio, Kilo, Spire, Flowchart spreadsheet.
There you go. Perfect. This deck is a spicy one. This was something that John considered taking to the Expedition brew. This one, is this the Expedition version or is this the...
Yeah, it's Expedition.
Okay. This deck is fun, man. When it goes off, it goes off. You can have a ton of fun. It doesn't take much for you to sell me on a Kilo deck. I think Kilo is a very fun card. It's slightly in a rough spot because, when there's too much removal, Kilo just gets blasted. But when she sticks around, man, she just does some great things. So this deck is one heck of a list just because Kilo being a good tutor enabler, it enables the toolbox type of deck where you have a bunch of 1-ofs and 2-ofs as answers to what your opponent is doing. Without the campaign cards included, this costs roughly about 51,000 shiftstone, so a little bit on the pricey side, but you can adjust it with the various 1-ofs. All right, hold on to your...
if you're just gonna waste shiftstone, making just one of a card, that I think all of these are playable in other decks too, pretty much, with a handful of exceptions. I think it's pretty safe craft. So
all right, let me break it down for you real quick. 3 Bubble Shield, 1 from Anguish, 1 from Below, 1 from Beyond, 4 Blightmoth, 4 Kilo Bold Innovator, 4 Petition, 4 Unfamiliar Interloper, 3 Blight Pass Smuggler, 1 Dizo Cabal Racketeer, 4 East Annex Smuggler, 1 Rectifier, 1 Paladin, Siphoner Paladin, 1 Diana Faith's Shield, 2 Learned Imitators, 1 Purge Driver, 1 Rollant Iron Tyrant, 1 Shelter Wing Rider, 1 Wasteland Broker, 1 Albin the Fallen, 1 Gentle Grazer, Black Sky Harbinger, Islands Frost Rider, Hilo the Skywinder, Akaria First Reaper, 2 Nahid's Distillations, Vara Limitless, Macto Valorous Savior, Shimmer Pack, 3 Argentport Silex, 4 Elysian Silex, 1 Justice Symbol, 4 Primal Symbol, 1 Rakano Silex, Seed of Chaos, Seed of Cunning, Seed of Impulse, Seed of Order, Seed of Progress, Shadow Symbol, Skycrack Silex, Time Symbol, 4 Xenon Silex, with a market consisting of Spire Shadows, Shrine to Carve It, Swirl of the Sands, Shenra Speaks, and Aramot's Machinations.
Yeah.
John, take it away.
All right. So, like Jedi said, this is like a big brain deck or whatever. It can be a little wonky, like you might expect when you look at a list like this. But I mean, I don't know about you, Jedi, but I found this to be surprisingly consistent. Actually, like the number of like playable opening hands I get where I actually can curve out somehow, and while doing counterplay, while setting up, like it actually has played out really well for me. I wouldn't release some wacky looking deck like this that just fell flat on its face. Like I don't publish a ton of my decks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think this one is legit. Um, like you kind of mentioned, the big issue with Kilo and Kilo decks in general, and Kilo in particular in Expedition is like turn to seed, right? Like that just kind of wrecks the deck. And so like Bubble Shield is a necessary evil or whatever. Like when you identify a matchup where you might get your Kilo seeded or something, you just cannot play it out and risk that. You have to either hold up a Bubble Shield protection or find some other way to protect her, right? In those cases. So that's like you're weak to that because you are like a Kilo deck, but because you're also the influence you generate with this deck is insane. Like you can actually hard cast every one of these cards, and I have. And Spire Shadows from your market is usually your first market play. Like unless if you're getting run over, sometimes you just go for the Shinra Speaks, obviously, just to like reset the board and then set up. But any proactive game, like Spire Shadows is your first hit, and then at that point, not only can you play everything influence wise, everything is like cheap. As some things are free. Like Spire Shadows just turns this deck into like some, pretty busted deck into a completely busted deck. Um, you know, every one of these cards I've grabbed specifically with Kilo at one time or another in a game. Um, it's just a delight to play. A lot of times it's fun to just click a unit without even knowing what you're going to grab and be like, ooh, this looks great. This looks juicy. This is the perfect card. Like, and then sometimes you're in a tight spot and you're like, okay, JD likes it. You're like, okay, I really need a specific card. What is it? Okay, this card. How do I get this card? And that's when the spreadsheet comes in handy. You really, in tight games like that, you need to know for sure what you're tutoring with Kilo and what you need to sacrifice and win and all that. And I have a spreadsheet here on the Eternal Warcry link um, that shows you, what based on their cost and their battle skills, what'll go into what when you sacrifice it with Kilo and with various modifiers and things like that. It's very helpful. Some of these cards, as you play with this deck, you'll realize just how good they are with Kilo and with Spire Shadows. And I mean, I don't know. Even if you lose some games, I mean, you just can't play a deck like this and not have fun. I think it goes big and your opponent goes home. And then some of the other things you can do from the market, like there's a one of broker, mostly that against certain matchups, you broker for the swirl. But usually it's for Ermot's Machinations because after you use a Spire Shadow, Ermot's Machinations is just busted, and having 4 of those in your top 20 cards is just busted. And then it's also a Shrine to Carve It deck, right? We're a 7 Smuggler deck, so our access to the market is very high. And you can often be like just any other aggressive, Shrine to Carve It deck in the format. Like, I think I've probably said it right. Like, no two games kind of play out the same way. When you go to tutor for something, sometimes you realize mid selection that it should actually be something else. Yeah, the deck is just fun. It's just a blast to play. So many decisions, and you can actually kill people with it. So enjoy.
Yeah, it's a thing. And then, like you said, when Shrine gets turned on, then everything just, I'm like, wait, how much of ramp do I get from this card? What am I able to get? It's, oh man. And
it's just one busted thing after another you can do with this deck.
Yeah.
I think in the description, what I say, like, it rewards an extremely calculated approach. Like, so calculated, I have a spreadsheet, right? And it rewards you with the ability to do basically anything you want for 2 power. Like, that's the deck.
We might have to do a YouTube video if you don't mind.
No, I'd love to. I think we should. This is a fun one. Like, obviously, like any deck like this, some, really good start from an aggro deck, you'll just get run over sometimes. But I mean, we do run 4 Blight Moths and like a bunch of other early plays to jam up the board, and then like you can just board wipe and stuff. Like, it survives aggro. It's surprisingly resilient.
Nice. Well,
I'm sure you took one look at this deck right when I handed it to you, Jedi, and you were like, "There's no way."
yeah, the influence is what really threw it off for me. But you're right. Like, it has more resilience than it seems on the surface. The biggest thing is definitely having that Kilo survive. If you have Kilo survive, then the deck just starts gaining so much value. But yeah, when I looked at it initially, I was like, oh my god, anytime someone plays fire, I'm just dead. But no.
And like these From cards are all like, if a From Beyond is in your hand early, you just play it and snipe their 3-drop or whatever, and then like they'll randomly transform and do like busted stuff. And like so I guess I didn't mention the card Learned Imitator, but it's basically 2 more copies of Kilo. The deck at one point had 4 of these, but hitting the 5 Primal Influence can be a challenge at times. But I think it's still worth it to have 2 more copies of Kilo potentially. And the only other thing that it really works with in the deck, well, not the only, like sometimes you do want it to be Roland if you're going to be killing stuff. A lot of times I will also select the transformed From Below, the Plasma Primordial. So like it'll be a 0/8 that makes 3/1 killers every turn. It's like that's another really good target for Learned Imitator.
Well,
For the most part, it's just extra copies of Kilo.
Plus, it copies the static effect, right? So if they play a kill spell on your imitator, it will get rid of all 4 copies of that kill spell.
Yes, yeah. So not the imitator. Like if it's a Plasma Primordial, right? Like it'll do that effect as well. Like I've done it plenty of times. It's sweet. Yeah. Like that's like Learned Imitator. It's either, if you don't need a Kilo, you go straight for the Plasma Primordial with that, because that is just sweet.
Sweet. Well, thanks for sharing that one with us, John. Of course, like I said, you can find the link to the Eternal Warcry in the show notes down below. And I guess this week we'll try to put a video together and post on the YouTube for you guys to see this deck in action.
Yeah, my pleasure.
That's going to do it. We're going to call it a show here, guys. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me this weekend. John, Alex, really appreciate you guys having or taking the time to be on the show yet again.
For sure.
Anytime, bud.
So as always, you can catch this content offline at youtube.com/EternalJourney, where you can see all the stuff we talk about on the screen, including draft videos and constructed tournament breakdowns and whatnot. If not, you want to hang out with us live and chit chat and ask your questions, check us out at twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ. And of course, hang out in the Discord. Link is down below. We have a phenomenal community there. All kinds of great people helping each other draft, helping each other build decks, discussing, and just a good place to vent when you run into a bad pocket in the ladder. But come hang out with us. We do all the stuff and things. And yeah, thanks again for hanging out with us this week. Next week, we're going to have a top ranked player come in and do a level up / deep dive. But until then, Godspeed on the tournament this weekend. And until next time, as always, happy gaming.
Bye.
Good luck in your draft keys this weekend, everyone.